Hello, everyone, and welcome to Best English Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia, and I am so happy you've chosen to spend your time with me today. Have you ever looked at your life, at your biggest dreams, and wondered what the secret ingredient is to make them a reality? We all have goals we are passionate about, but sometimes there's a huge gap between the person we are today and the person we dream of becoming. If you're ready to learn how to build that bridge, to unlock the one skill that powers almost every success story you've ever heard, then make sure you subscribe and settle in. Because today, we're going to talk about the quiet, unstoppable force that can truly change everything. We're going to talk about why consistency matters. Let's start with a familiar story. Maybe it's your story. You set a big, exciting goal. Maybe you want to get in the best shape of your life, or learn a new language fluently, or perhaps build a successful online business. You start with so much energy. You buy the new gym clothes, you download the language apps, you spend a whole weekend creating a beautiful website. For the first week, you are unstoppable. You go to the gym every single day. You practice your new language for hours. You post new content constantly. But then, life happens. You have a busy week at work. You feel a little tired, and you decide to skip one day, just one. But that one day turns into 2, then a week, and before you know it, the gym clothes are in the back of your closet, the apps are unopened on your phone, and the website hasn't been updated in months. You look back and wonder, what happened? The motivation was so strong. The goal was so clear. Why did it all fall apart? If this sounds familiar, I want you to know you are not alone. It's a human experience. We often believe that success comes from grand, heroic actions, from moments of intense effort and genius. We look for that one big break, that one perfect diet, that one viral video. But the secret is much quieter, much simpler, and much less dramatic. The secret isn't about intensity, but about something else entirely. It is a powerful force that works silently in the background of our lives, shaping our future one small action at a time. Let's begin by truly understanding what consistency means. The word itself might sound a bit boring. It doesn't have the excitement of passion or the power of motivation. It sounds like routine, like repetition, and in a way, it is. But its power is not in the excitement of a single action, but in the cumulative force of many small actions repeated over time. Imagine a single drop of water falling onto a large, hard stone. The first drop makes no visible mark. Neither does the second, or the 100th, or even the 1,000th. If you only watched for a few minutes, you would conclude that the water is having no effect at all. But if that drop of water falls in the same spot, again and again, day after day, year after year, something incredible happens. Over time, that gentle, persistent drop of water will wear a hole right through the solid stone. The stone is massive and strong. The drop of water is tiny and weak. How is this possible? The answer is consistency. It wasn't the size or power of any single drop. It was the relentless, unchanging repetition of the action that created the change. This is the perfect metaphor for how consistency works in our own lives. Your goals, your big dreams, are the stone. They can seem huge, solid, and impossible to change. Your daily actions are the drops of water. One action, one small effort, might seem insignificant. Practicing a new language for just 10 minutes, going for a short walk, writing a single paragraph, saving just $1. On its own, each action feels like it does nothing. You don't become fluent after one 10-minute lesson. You don't get fit after one walk. You don't write a book in one paragraph. And because we don't see an immediate result, we get discouraged. We think, what's the point? This isn't working. And so we stop. We stop the drops from falling. But the magic, the real transformation, happens when we don't stop. It happens when we trust the process, even when we can't see the progress. Consistency is the act of faith that each small drop, each tiny effort, is contributing to a massive change that is happening just beneath the surface. It's not about perfection. The water doesn't have to fall at the exact same millisecond each day. It's about showing up again and again. It's about maintaining the rhythm. Think about a path through a dense forest. The first person to walk that way has to push through branches and step over logs. It's difficult and slow. The second person has a slightly easier time, following the faint trail of the first. If 10 people walk the same route, the path becomes clearer. If 100 people walk it, the ground becomes packed and smooth. After thousands of people, it becomes a well-worn, easy-to-follow path. Your habits and skills are exactly like this. The first time you try something new, your brain has to work hard to create a new neural pathway. It's like forcing your way through that dense forest. It feels awkward and difficult. But each time you repeat the action, each time you practice that new skill, you walk that same neural path again. And with each repetition, the path becomes wider, smoother, and easier to travel. Soon, you don't even have to think about it. The action becomes automatic. It becomes a habit. This is consistency at work, physically changing the structure of your brain to make your desired action the path of least resistance. Consistency is not just a principle of success, it's a principle of biology. So, why is this simple idea so incredibly difficult to put into practice? If we know that small daily actions lead to big results, why do we struggle so much to maintain them? The challenge lies deep within our own minds. In a constant battle between two versions of ourselves, there is the present you and there is the future you. The present you wants comfort, pleasure, and immediate rewards. It wants to watch another episode on Netflix instead of going for a run. It wants to eat the sweet, sugary donut right now instead of the healthy apple that will benefit you later. The present you operates on the principle of instant gratification. The future you, on the other hand, is the person you dream of becoming. The future you is healthy, fluent in a new language, financially secure, and skilled. The future you is the one who benefits from all the hard work. The problem is, the future you isn't here yet. It's an abstract idea, a distant possibility. The present you is here right now, feeling tired, hungry, or bored. And more often than not, the present you wins the argument. This is why relying solely on motivation is a losing strategy. Motivation is a feeling, an emotion. It's powerful and exciting, like a rocket launch. It can get you started with incredible force. But like a rocket, it burns a lot of fuel, and it doesn't last forever. Motivation is high when you start a new project, but it naturally fades when you face the first challenge, the first boring task, or the first day you just don't feel like it. When motivation disappears, what do you have left? If your whole plan was based on feeling motivated, then your plan falls apart. This is where consistency, powered by discipline, takes over. Discipline is the bridge between your goals and your accomplishments. Discipline is what you do when you don't feel like doing it. It's the choice to honor the commitment you made to your future self, even when your present self is protesting. Consistency is the result of that discipline applied over and over again. It's about creating a system that does not depend on your mood. Let's explore this through a story. Consider a young woman named Maya. Maya dreamed of being a writer. She had a wonderful idea for a novel, with fascinating characters and an exciting plot. She felt a huge surge of motivation. She went out and bought a special notebook and a fancy pen. She cleared her desk and set up a perfect writing space. For the first weekend, she wrote for 10 hours straight. The words poured out of her. She wrote 30 pages and felt like a true author. But then Monday came, with work and chores. She was tired. She told herself she would write on Tuesday. On Tuesday, a friend called and invited her out. She thought, I deserve a break. I wrote so much on the weekend. The week went by, and the notebook remained closed. The next weekend, she looked at the 30 pages. The initial excitement was gone. Starting again felt daunting, like trying to push a heavy boulder from a standstill. The motivation had vanished, and her dream stalled. A few years later, older and wiser, Maya decided to try again, but this time she took a different approach. She ignored motivation. She made a simple, unbreakable rule for herself. She would write for just 15 minutes every single day. That was it. Not 10 pages, not a chapter, just 15 minutes. Some days, the 15 minutes were a struggle. She would sit down, look at the blank page, and her mind would feel completely empty. She would write one clumsy sentence, "The sun was bright," and then delete it. She would check her phone, make a cup of tea, and do anything to avoid the page. Her present self was screaming, "This is pointless. You're not writing anything good. You've lost your talent." But she honored her rule. She would force herself to type just a few words, describing the room or her character's shoes, until the 15 minutes were over. On other days, the 15 minutes would fly by. An idea would spark, and she would find herself writing for an hour, lost in the world she was creating, the characters speaking in her mind. But the outcome, whether she wrote one sentence or 5 pages, didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was showing up for those 15 minutes. She kept a calendar on her wall, and every day she completed her 15 minutes, she would draw a big red X on that day. Soon she had a chain of red X's. Her only goal became not to break the chain. Day after day, week after week, month after month, she kept going. The process was slow, almost invisible. She wasn't having heroic 10-hour writing sessions. She was just a person showing up to her desk for 15 minutes a day. But the pages began to add up. The story began to take shape. She started to understand her characters more deeply. The small daily practice allowed her ideas to grow slowly and naturally. A year later, she had a complete first draft of her novel. It wasn't perfect, but it was done. She had built a mountain not by trying to lift it all at once, but by carrying one small stone every single day. Maya learned that consistency is more powerful than intensity. The small daily habit achieved what the huge burst of weekend motivation could not. She had trained her brain, built a system, and honored the promise she made to her future self. This principle applies to every area of our lives. Let's look at learning a new skill. Think about a man named Carlos who wanted to learn to play the piano. He was in his 40s and had always regretted not learning as a child. He bought a beautiful digital piano and a stack of beginner books. In the first week, he was obsessed. He practiced for 2 hours every night after work. He learned the names of the notes and how to play a simple scale. He felt a huge sense of accomplishment. But his fingers were sore. He started to get frustrated when he couldn't play a song perfectly right away. The 2-hour practice sessions started to feel like a huge commitment. After a long day at work, the thought of another 2 hours of frustrating practice was exhausting. He skipped one day, then another. Soon, the beautiful piano became just a piece of furniture in his living room. Now, contrast this with his friend, a woman named Chloe. She also wanted to learn the piano. She made a different commitment. She decided she would sit at the piano for 20 minutes every morning with her coffee. Just 20 minutes. Her goal wasn't to master a song or become a great pianist in a month. Her only goal was to touch the piano keys for 20 minutes each day. The ritual became something she looked forward to. The smell of the coffee, the quiet of the house, the feel of the cool keys under her fingertips. Some mornings, she just played scales up and down, focusing on the movement of her fingers. Other mornings, she worked on just 1 or 2 measures of a new song, playing them over and over again, very slowly. Her progress felt incredibly slow. After a month, she could only play a very simple children's song, and not very well. She could have been discouraged if she compared herself to Carlos's explosive first week. But Chloe wasn't focused on the short term. She was enjoying the quiet morning ritual. She was building the path in the forest. 6 months passed. Carlos's piano was silent. Chloe, however, had spent 20 minutes at her piano almost every single day. That's roughly 60 hours of practice. She could now play several songs. She could read music more easily. Her fingers knew where to go without her having to think so much. A year later, she was able to sit down and play a beautiful piece of music that brought tears to her family's eyes. She hadn't performed any miracles. She had never practiced for hours on end until she was exhausted. She had simply shown up. Her small, consistent effort, her daily drops of water, had turned the impossible stone of learning a new instrument into a flowing melody. This is especially true for the very skill that you are practicing right now, learning a new language. This journey, more than almost any other, is a marathon, not a sprint, and it is built entirely on a foundation of consistency. Let's imagine a young man named Leo. Leo worked for a company that had an office in Paris, and he dreamed of being transferred there one day. To have a chance, he knew he needed to learn French. So, like many of us, he started with great intensity. He bought an expensive, complete fluency software package and a thick, intimidating grammar book. He made a bold declaration: I will study French for 2 hours every single night. For the first week, he was a perfect student. He spent hours memorizing verb conjugations, repeating phrases from the software, and highlighting pages in his grammar book. He learned how to say, "Hello, my name is Leo," and "The cat is under the table." He felt like he was making huge progress. But by the second week, the initial motivations started to crack. The grammar rules became more complex and confusing. The 2-hour study sessions after a long day of work felt like a heavy burden. He would sit at his desk, staring at a page of rules about the subjunctive mood, and his mind would feel tired and foggy. He started to miss a day here and there. "I'm too tired tonight," he'd say. "I'll make it up on the weekend." But on the weekend, he'd try to do a 6-hour marathon session and end up feeling overwhelmed and frustrated. Within a month, the expensive software was unopened, and the grammar book was a coaster for his coffee mug. Leo concluded, just as many people do, "I'm just not good at languages." Almost a year later, a new position in the Paris office was announced. The dream was still alive, but his French was non-existent. Feeling a mix of hope and regret, he decided to try one more time. But this time, he threw out the old model of intensity. He created a new system, a system so small and simple it was almost impossible to skip. His new daily French habit had 3 parts, and the whole routine took only about 15 to 20 minutes. First, on his morning commute, he would listen to a 10-minute podcast for French learners. Not an advanced one, but a very simple one where the hosts spoke slowly. The first few weeks, it was mostly noise. He would pick out a word here and there, bonjour, merci, café, but the rest was a blur. It was frustrating, but his only rule was to listen. He didn't have to understand everything. He just had to put his headphones on and listen for 10 minutes. Second, while waiting for his coffee to brew, he would use a free flashcard app on his phone to learn 5 new vocabulary words. Just 5. He didn't try to memorize 50 words a day. He just focused on 5. The app used spaced repetition, so it would show him the words just before he was about to forget them. Third, right before bed, he would spend just 1 minute speaking French out loud to himself. He would stand in his room and describe things he could see. This is a bed. The bed is white. This is a lamp. I like the lamp. It felt incredibly silly. His sentences were simple, his pronunciation was terrible, and he made constant mistakes. But his rule wasn't to be perfect. His rule was just to speak for 1 minute. He did this every single day. It was his small secret routine. To an outsider, it looked like he was doing almost nothing, but the drops of water were falling on the stone. After a month of listening to the podcast, he started to recognize the rhythm and flow of the language. He began to pick out more and more words he had been learning on his flashcard app. A tiny connection formed in his brain. Aha! That's the word for today. After 3 months, he could understand the general topic of the podcast conversation. After 6 months, he could follow most of the main ideas. His vocabulary had grown by almost 1,000 words, 5 at a time. His 1 minute of speaking had become 2 minutes, then 5, because he actually had more words to use. He started describing his day, not just his room. The sentences became more complex. A year after starting his small, consistent habit, an opportunity for a video interview for the Paris position came up. He was terrified. He knew he wasn't fluent. But when one of the interviewers from Paris switched to French to ask him a simple question, something amazing happened. Leo understood her, and without thinking, he replied. He said, "Yes, I have been learning French for the last year because I am very interested in this opportunity." It wasn't perfect. His accent wasn't native. But it was a real conversation. He got the job. His success wasn't because of a magical language learning talent. It was the direct result of his consistent daily system. It was the thousands of tiny efforts, the 5 words a day, the 10 minutes of listening, the 1 minute of silly-feeling practice, that had compounded into a life-changing skill. He had built his fluency not with a loud explosion of effort, but with a quiet, steady, daily whisper. This is the promise of consistency in your own English learning journey. The small effort you're making today by listening to this podcast is a drop of water. It matters. Now, let's move this idea into the realm of health and fitness, an area where so many of us struggle with consistency. Take the story of a man named David. David wanted to lose 50 pounds. He decided to go all in. He threw out all the junk food in his house, bought only vegetables and chicken, and signed up for a high-intensity gym class that met 5 times a week. The first week was brutal, but he did it. He was sore all over and constantly hungry, but the number on the scale went down, and that motivated him. The second week was even harder. He started to dream about pizza. He dreaded the thought of the intense workouts. By the third week, he had a particularly stressful day at work. He came home exhausted and starving. The present him screamed for comfort. He ordered a large pizza and ate the whole thing. The guilt was immense. He felt like a complete failure. He thought, "I've ruined everything." He skipped the gym the next day and the day after that. The extreme diet and workout plan had crashed and burned. Now consider another person, a woman named Sarah. Sarah had a similar goal. She also wanted to improve her health and lose weight. But she had tried extreme diets before and knew they didn't work for her. So she decided to focus on consistency with very small changes. Her first rule was simple. She would go for a 15-minute walk during her lunch break every single day. It wasn't a run. She didn't even have to change her clothes. It was just a walk. It was so easy. It felt like she wasn't doing anything. Her second rule was to add 1 glass of water to her daily routine. That was it. For the first month, that's all she did. A 15-minute walk and 1 extra glass of water. After a month, she noticed she had a little more energy. The walk had become a pleasant, automatic part of her day. So she decided to add another small habit. She would add 1 serving of vegetables to her dinner each night. Again, a small, manageable change. She continued her walk and her water. Month by month, she added 1 small, positive habit. She started taking the stairs instead of the elevator at work. She switched from sugary soda to sparkling water. She started doing 10 minutes of stretching before bed. None of these actions were dramatic. None of them required immense willpower or motivation. They were just tiny drops of water. She began to notice changes that weren't on the scale. She noticed she could walk up a long flight of stairs without feeling out of breath. She noticed her skin looked clearer. She noticed she enjoyed the taste of healthy food more. These small victories fueled her far more than the number on the scale ever did. A year went by. David was back where he started, feeling frustrated and having tried and failed 2 more quick-fix diets. Sarah, on the other hand, was a different person. She had lost over 40 pounds, but more importantly, she felt amazing. She had more energy, she slept better, and she was proud of herself. She hadn't achieved her goal through a short burst of painful, unsustainable effort. She had transformed her life by weaving a tapestry of small, consistent, healthy habits. She learned that the goal wasn't to suffer for 30 days. The goal was to build a lifestyle that she could happily maintain forever. Consistency had allowed her to make changes that were so small, her present self didn't rebel. And over time, these tiny changes compounded into a life-altering transformation. This idea of small changes adding up over time is known as the compound effect. It's one of the most powerful forces in the universe, but it's often misunderstood because its effects are so gradual and invisible in the short term. Think of it like this. If I offered you a choice between taking $3 million in cash right now or taking a single magic penny that doubles in value every day for 31 days, which would you choose? Most people would take the $3 million. It's a sure thing, a huge amount of money. The penny seems insignificant. Let's see what happens. On day 1, you have 1 cent. Day 2, 2 cents. Day 5, you only have 16 cents. After 10 days, you have just over $5. You'd probably be feeling pretty bad about your choice. Your friend is enjoying their $3 million, and you have less than the price of a cup of coffee. Even after 20 days, you only have about $5,000. It's not bad, but it's nothing compared to $3 million. But this is where the magic of compounding begins to take over. the growth starts to accelerate dramatically. On day 28, you have over $1,300,000. On day 29, it doubles to over $2,600,000. On day 30, it doubles again to over $5,300,000. And on the final day, day 31, your single penny becomes a staggering $10,737,418. You end up with more than 3 times the initial offer of $3 million. The most explosive growth happened in the last few days. The first few weeks of slow, almost invisible progress were essential for creating the foundation for that final massive result. Our habits work in exactly the same way. The results of your consistent efforts are not linear. You don't get 1 unit of result for every 1 unit of effort. In the beginning, your efforts seem to produce very little. This is the period most people quit. They are in day 15 of the penny analogy, looking at their small results and thinking, this is not worth it. They don't have the patience to wait for day 31. The person who practices their instrument for 20 minutes a day, the person who learns 1 new word a day, the person who walks for 15 minutes a day, they are all choosing the magic penny. They are trusting in the power of the compound effect. They understand that the greatest rewards are not immediate, but are the result of small, smart choices made consistently over time. Your life today is essentially a sum of all your habits. The health you have, the knowledge you possess, the relationships you enjoy. They are all lagging measures of your daily routines. Let's apply this to another critical area, our financial well-being. This is a perfect example of where small, consistent actions have an enormous impact over time. Let's imagine 2 friends, Ben and Sam, who graduate from university at the same time and start jobs with the exact same salary. Ben is excited by his new income. He buys a new car, the latest smartphone, and expensive clothes. He enjoys going out to nice restaurants with friends several times a week. He thinks, I'm young, I should enjoy my money. He saves whatever is left at the end of the month, which is usually very little, or nothing at all. Sam takes a different path. He also enjoys his new income, but he makes a decision from day 1. He sets up an automatic transfer. Every single payday, before he does anything else, 10% of his salary is automatically moved into a separate savings and investment account. It's not a huge amount of money. He barely notices it's gone. He drives a modest used car and learns to cook, so he eats at home more often. On the surface, Ben's life looks much more exciting. He has the newer things, the more impressive stories to tell. Sam's life is quieter, less flashy. 5 years pass. Ben has a lot of nice things, but he also has car payments and credit card debt. He feels a constant pressure to keep earning more just to maintain his lifestyle. He is living paycheck to paycheck. Sam, on the other hand, has been consistently saving and investing that 10% every month. Thanks to the power of compound interest, his initial small savings have started to grow on their own. He has a solid emergency fund, which gives him a feeling of security. Now, let's fast forward another 10 years. They are both in their mid-30s. Ben is still caught in the same cycle. He's earning more, but he's spending more too. He's stressed about money and feels trapped in his job because he can't afford to take a risk. Sam's consistent automatic savings have now grown into a significant amount of money. One day, a unique opportunity comes along. A chance to invest in a friend's startup business, or maybe a chance to buy his dream home at a great price. Because he has been consistent, Sam has the financial freedom to take advantage of this opportunity. Ben can only watch from the sidelines, wishing he had the same freedom. Sam's wealth wasn't built by one big, lucky investment. It was built by a simple, boring, consistent decision he made over a decade ago and stuck with month after month, year after year. That is the power of financial consistency. Let's also consider how consistency transforms our creative pursuits. It's not just about learning a skill like the piano, it's about the very act of creation. Many people believe that creativity is something that strikes like lightning, a sudden flash of inspiration. But most professional artists, writers, and musicians will tell you that creativity is a muscle that grows stronger with consistent use. Consider the story of Anna, an amateur photographer. She loved taking pictures, but only did it on vacations or special occasions. She felt her photos were okay, but not great. She wanted to develop her own unique style, but didn't know how. So she gave herself a challenge. Take and post one photo online every single day for an entire year. The project was called Photo 365. The first month was easy and fun. She took pictures of flowers, her cat, interesting things she saw on her way to work. But by the second month, it became a challenge. Some days were gray and rainy. Nothing seemed interesting. She felt uninspired. She was tempted to quit, thinking, I have no good ideas today. But she had made a commitment. So, on those boring days, she forced herself to find a photo. She would focus on something incredibly simple: the pattern of rain on a window, the texture of a piece of fruit, the way light reflected off a spoon. A strange thing happened. By forcing herself to create, even when she wasn't inspired, she started to see the world differently. The daily practice trained her eye to find beauty and interest in ordinary, everyday life. She started noticing light and shadows, shapes and textures that she had never seen before. Her technical skills also improved dramatically. Through sheer repetition, she learned her camera inside and out. She experimented with different angles, settings, and compositions. Over the year, her online gallery grew from a random collection of snapshots into a cohesive body of work. A style began to emerge. People who followed her project could recognize an Anna photo. She had developed her unique creative voice not by waiting for inspiration, but by consistently showing up and doing the work. The daily habit had transformed her from someone who occasionally took pictures into a true photographer. She learned that inspiration doesn't lead to action. Action leads to inspiration. Sometimes, the grandest achievements are not the result of one person's consistency, but the product of a faith in process that spans years, even decades. This is often true in the world of science and research. Think about an archaeologist. Let's call her Dr. Eleanor Vance. From a young age, Eleanor was fascinated by a little-known civilization mentioned only in a few fragmented ancient texts. Most historians considered them a myth, a legend. But Eleanor believed they were real, and she dedicated her entire career to finding their lost capital city. Her life was not one of dramatic, exciting discoveries. For 25 years, her life was a testament to methodical, patient, and often boring consistency. Her days were spent in dusty library archives, hunched over crumbling maps and manuscripts, carefully translating texts line by line. She would spend months cross-referencing a single symbol or place name. Then there were the summers spent in the field, under a baking sun, leading archaeological digs. Most of these digs yielded nothing. They would spend weeks meticulously excavating a site, carefully brushing away layers of dirt, only to find remnants of a common settlement, not the lost city she was looking for. Her colleagues respected her work ethic, but many privately thought she was wasting her time chasing a ghost. She faced constant challenges to her funding. At academic conferences, she would present her research, which often amounted to, "We have not found it yet, but here is what we have learned." It was a slow, incremental process. Every piece of information, every failed dig, was a tiny drop of water. It didn't look like progress to the outside world. There were many times Eleanor felt a deep sense of despair. She would look at her life's work and see only a collection of failures and dead ends. The temptation to give up, to move on to a more conventional and rewarding area of research, was immense. But her consistency was not just in the physical work, it was in her unwavering faith in the scientific method. Every morning she would approach the problem with the same disciplined process. Analyze the evidence, form a hypothesis, test it, record the results, repeat. Her system was her rock. She wasn't relying on a flash of genius, she was relying on her process. One winter, back in the library, she was re-examining a familiar text for the 100th time. But this time, using a new digital imaging technique, she noticed a faint marking on the manuscript she had never seen before. It was a tiny annotation, a note in the margin, written in a different dialect. Her years of consistent study allowed her to recognize the dialect instantly. The note described a river that had changed its course centuries ago. Suddenly, 25 years of data clicked into place. All her old maps were based on the river's current location. She realized she had been digging in the wrong place all along, but only by a few kilometers. Her previous failures were not failures at all. They were essential data points that had eliminated the wrong locations. They had narrowed the search area. The next summer, her team dug at the new site, guided by the ancient note. Within a week, they unearthed the wall of a large structure. Within a month, they had uncovered the foundations of the lost city. It was one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the century. When the news broke, the world saw Dr. Vance as a brilliant hero who had a flash of insight. But Eleanor knew the truth. Her discovery was not a single moment of brilliance. It was the result of over 9,000 days of consistent, methodical, and often discouraging work. It was the final, dramatic doubling of the penny, made possible only by all the quiet, patient days that came before it. This power of consistency isn't just for building new things from the ground up. It is also, perhaps, the most powerful tool we have for rebuilding when things fall apart. Let's talk about a man named Richard. For 20 years, Richard had owned a beloved local restaurant. It was his passion, his identity. He knew his customers by name. He had created a place where people celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. But then, an economic recession hit the town hard. People stopped eating out. A new, bigger chain restaurant opened down the street with lower prices. Despite all his efforts, Richard's business began to fail. He used his personal savings to keep it going, but eventually, he had to face the heartbreaking reality. He had to close the restaurant. Richard was devastated. It wasn't just the loss of his business. He felt he had lost himself. For months, he was lost in a fog of grief and shame. He would stay home, watching television, feeling completely paralyzed. The idea of starting over felt like being asked to climb Mount Everest in his bare feet. It was impossible. His motivation was zero. His present self wanted nothing more than to do nothing, to hide from the world. One afternoon, sitting in his unkempt backyard, he noticed a single, large weed growing through the cracks in the patio. The yard was a mess, just like the rest of his life. He looked at the weed and thought, The whole yard is a disaster. I can't fix it. But then a second thought came. But I can pull that one weed. It was a tiny, manageable task. He got up, walked over, and pulled the weed out of the ground. It was a small, almost meaningless action. But for the first time in months, he had done something. He had taken one small step. That tiny action planted a seed of an idea in his mind. The next day, he thought about his career. The idea of finding a new job or starting a new business was still too big, too overwhelming. It was like trying to fix the whole messy yard at once. So he asked himself, what is the professional equivalent of pulling one weed? He decided it was making one phone call, not to ask for a job, but just to reconnect with someone from his past. His new rule was simple. He would make one phone call every day to someone in his old network. The first few weeks were incredibly difficult. His hands would sweat before he dialed the number. He felt like a failure calling up old colleagues and suppliers. Some conversations were awkward. People were polite but had nothing to offer. Many times, he wanted to give up. The feeling of rejection was painful. His present self screamed that this was a pointless exercise in humiliation. But he stuck to his rule. One call a day. That was the only goal. He wasn't focused on the outcome of the call. He was focused on the system of making the call. He was just showing up. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. One former supplier he called didn't have a job for him, but mentioned that another company was looking for someone to do some part-time consulting on menu design. It wasn't much, but it was a project. It was the first drop of water hitting the stone. While working on that project, he learned about new trends in the restaurant industry. On another call, a former employee told him about a new kitchen management software that was saving businesses money. He started taking notes. Each call, whether it led to an opportunity or not, gave him a small piece of information. He was no longer isolated and stagnant. He was connecting and learning. After about 4 months of making one call every single day, he reached out to an old acquaintance, a woman who owned several successful cafes in a nearby city. They had a pleasant, friendly chat. Nothing came of it. It was just another call, another drop of water. But 2 months after that, the woman called him back. She said, "Richard, I've been thinking about our conversation. I'm expanding, and I need someone with your experience to oversee the entire operation. I'm not looking for a manager, I'm looking for a partner." It was the opportunity of a lifetime, an opportunity that seemed to come out of the blue. But Richard knew it wasn't magic or luck. It was the result of 6 months of consistent, disciplined, often painful work. It was the compound effect of over 100 individual phone calls. He hadn't tried to rebuild his career in one heroic effort. He had rebuilt it one conversation, one connection, one weed at a time. He had laid one brick every single day, and now he had the foundation for a new building. His story is a powerful testament that consistency is the ultimate tool not just for achieving dreams, but for recovering from our deepest failures. This brings us to a crucial part of any long journey, the plateau. This is the period where you continue to be consistent. You put in the work every day, but your progress seems to stop. You practice your English, but you don't feel like you're getting more fluent. You go to the gym, but your strength isn't increasing. You play the piano, but you're not mastering any new songs. This is perhaps the most dangerous time, the moment when most people give up. They conclude that consistency isn't working anymore. Let's go back to Chloe, the piano player. After about 8 months of her consistent 20-minute daily practice, She hit a plateau. She knew several songs, but when she tried to learn a new, more complex piece, she felt stuck. Her fingers felt clumsy. She would make the same mistakes over and over. For weeks, she felt like she was getting worse, not better. It was incredibly frustrating. Her present self told her, "See, you've reached your limit. This is as good as you'll ever be. Maybe it's time to stop." But Chloe had built a strong habit. The morning ritual was so ingrained that she sat down at the piano anyway. Because she trusted the process, she decided to change her approach slightly. Instead of just trying to play the difficult piece, she spent her 20 minutes on something different. For a week, she only practiced scales and finger exercises to improve her dexterity. The next week, she spent her time learning a bit about music theory, trying to understand the structure of the piece. She was still being consistent with her time, but she was varying the focus of her practice. Then, one morning, she went back to the difficult piece of music. And almost like magic, her fingers navigated a difficult passage that had been impossible before. She hadn't noticed the tiny incremental improvements from her other exercises, but they had been happening. She had broken through the plateau. She realized that plateaus are a normal and necessary part of learning. They are a sign that your brain is consolidating all the new information it has learned. The key is to not stop when you are on the plateau. You must continue to show up, trust the process, and sometimes be willing to vary your approach slightly. Consistency will carry you across the flatlands to the next mountain you need to climb. Now that we understand the deep importance of consistency, let's look again at our professional lives. Success in a career rarely comes from one single promotion or one lucky break. It's built on a foundation of consistent daily work, learning, and relationship building. Imagine two young graphic designers, Liam and Noah, who start at the same company on the same day. They have similar skills and talent. Liam is ambitious and wants to get promoted quickly. He works incredibly hard on the big, visible projects. When he's assigned a major campaign, he stays late, works weekends, and produces spectacular results. His bosses are very impressed. But on the smaller day-to-day tasks, he's less interested. He does the minimum required. Noah, on the other hand, takes a different approach. He works hard on all his projects, big and small. But he also dedicates 30 minutes every single day to self-improvement. He uses this time to watch tutorials on new 3D animation techniques, to practice a new illustration style, or to read about the latest trends in marketing and user experience design. To an outside observer, Liam seems like the star. His big project successes get a lot of attention. Noah's daily 30 minutes of learning are invisible to everyone else. It's his magic penny. For the first year or two, Liam gets promoted faster. His strategy of intense bursts of effort on big projects seems to be working. Noah continues his steady, consistent daily learning, even when no one is watching. But then, after about 5 years, a shift begins to happen. The industry changes. A new type of software becomes the standard. Clients are no longer just asking for static designs. They want interactive experiences and short animations for social media. Liam is caught off guard. His existing skills, while good, are becoming outdated. He has to scramble to learn the new tools. Noah, however, has been learning about these changes all along in his daily 30-minute sessions. He's not just familiar with the new software, he's an expert. He's been experimenting with the new design style for months. A huge, important project comes up that requires these new skills. While Liam is struggling to catch up, Noah is perfectly prepared. He leads the project and creates something revolutionary for the company. Suddenly, everyone sees Noah as a visionary, a leader. His career overtakes Liam's and continues to grow, while Liam's plateaus. Noah's success didn't come from that one big project. That project was just the moment when his years of quiet, consistent effort became visible to the world. He had been doubling his penny every day, and now everyone could see the result. The power of consistency even extends beyond ourselves and our immediate relationships, into our communities. So far, the stories we've shared have focused on individual consistency. But this principle also applies, perhaps even more powerfully, to groups. Let's imagine a small urban neighborhood. In the middle of it is a forgotten, empty lot. It's full of weeds, broken glass, and trash. It's an eyesore, a place people avoid. One day, a longtime resident named Maria gets an idea. What if they could turn this ugly space into a beautiful community garden? She calls a neighborhood meeting. The idea is met with a huge burst of excitement and motivation. It's a wonderful vision. On the first Saturday, dozens of people show up for a big cleanup day. They work for hours, filling huge bags with trash, pulling up the biggest weeds and turning over the soil. The transformation is dramatic and immediate. Everyone feels proud and accomplished. They take pictures and celebrate their hard work. But creating a garden is not a one-day event. The real work begins after the initial excitement fades. The garden needs consistent daily care. It needs watering, especially on hot days. It needs constant weeding, as the unwanted plants are relentless. It needs protection from pests. Maria puts up a schedule. But after the first week, fewer and fewer people show up. Life gets busy. The work is not as exciting as the big cleanup day. It's repetitive. It's boring. For a while, it seems like the project might fail. The weeds start to creep back. The soil gets dry and hard. But a small group of people, maybe 5 or 6 of them, refuse to let the vision die. Maria is there every morning for 30 minutes before work to water the new seedlings. An elderly man named George comes every afternoon and spends an hour patiently pulling weeds from one small section. A young couple, the Garcias, bring their children on weekends to help plant new vegetables. They are the consistent ones. They are the drops of water on the stone. Their daily efforts are small and barely noticeable. One person watering doesn't make the whole garden green. One person weeding one small patch doesn't clear the whole lot. But their consistency creates a new kind of momentum. Other neighbors see them out there, day after day. They see the first tiny green shoots emerging from the dark soil. Their quiet, persistent work inspires a few more people to join in. Someone brings a bench, someone else builds a small fence. The small, consistent core group created a foundation of progress that others could build upon. By the end of the summer, the transformation is breathtaking. The ugly, forgotten lot is now a vibrant, thriving garden, filled with flowers, tomatoes, cucumbers, and herbs. It has become the heart of the neighborhood. People gather there in the evenings. Children play on the grass. Neighbors share the food they have grown together. The final, beautiful garden wasn't created on that first big cleanup day. That day was just the spark. The garden was truly built by the thousands of small, quiet, consistent actions of the few who showed up day after day. They demonstrated that consistency doesn't just grow plants, it grows communities. This idea of consistency for the benefit of others finds its most profound expression not just in our communities, but in our deepest, most personal relationships, especially in times of crisis. It's a form of consistency that isn't about personal gain, but about love and devotion. Let me tell you a story about a woman named Clara and her husband, Mark. They had a wonderful life together. One day, Mark, who was an active and healthy man, had a serious stroke. It came out of nowhere, and it changed everything in an instant. He survived, but he was left with severe physical limitations. He could barely speak, and one side of his body was almost completely paralyzed. The doctors told Clara that his recovery would be a long, slow, and uncertain road. There were no guarantees. In that moment, Clara's world was shattered. The future they had planned together was gone. Mark was deeply depressed and frustrated, trapped in a body that wouldn't obey him. The initial phase was filled with doctors and nurses, but soon Mark came home and the true work began. This work was a new kind of consistency, a quiet, relentless daily grind. Their days became a repeating schedule of small, seemingly impossible tasks. Every morning, Clara would help Mark with his physical therapy exercises. The goal for the first month was simple, for Mark to be able to clench his left hand into a fist. That was it. For 30 minutes every morning, she would gently place his fingers in her own, encouraging him to squeeze. Just a little, Mark. Try to feel the muscle. Most days, nothing happened. His fingers remained limp. It was heartbreaking and frustrating for both of them. Mark would often end the session in tears, feeling hopeless. Anyone watching would have seen no progress at all. Clara felt her own hope fading at times. She was exhausted, emotionally and physically, but her consistency was her promise. Every morning she showed up. She would take a deep breath, put a calm smile on her face, and say, "Okay, let's try again today." She became an expert at celebrating micro-victories. One morning, after weeks of trying, Mark's index finger twitched. Just a tiny, barely visible movement. Clara's heart leapt. She didn't see a twitch. She saw progress. She saw hope. She celebrated it as if he had just won a marathon. "Look at that! You did it! That's amazing!" Her consistent encouragement began to slowly chip away at his despair. This was their life, a series of small, consistent efforts. The 30 minutes on his hand exercises, the 20 minutes of speech therapy, practicing a single sound over and over, the grueling process of helping him stand for just 10 seconds, then 20, then a minute. There were so many days with no visible progress. There were so many moments of wanting to give up. But Clara's system was simple. Today, we just do the work for today. Months turned into a year. The compounding effect of thousands of small, consistent actions began to show. The twitch in his finger became a weak grip. The weak grip became strong enough to hold a fork. The single sound he practiced became a word. The 10 seconds of standing became a slow, painful step with a walker. Each of these milestones was not a miracle. Each one was the result of hundreds of hours of patient, repetitive, consistent work. 2 years after his stroke, Mark was able to walk with a cane into the very hospital that had treated him. He could speak in slow but clear sentences. His recovery was remarkable, and the doctors called him a miracle. But Clara knew the truth. It wasn't a miracle. It was the result of consistency in its purest form. It was the power of showing up, day after day, for someone you love. It was the faith that each tiny, seemingly insignificant effort, each drop of water, was slowly wearing away the impossible stone of his condition. This story teaches us that consistency isn't just a tool for building our own dreams. It is the very foundation of hope, healing, and the deepest forms of human connection. So, we have seen how consistency is the key to learning skills, improving our health, building our careers, and nurturing our relationships, communities, and even our loved ones in times of need. We understand the power of the compound effect. But the question remains, how do we actually build consistency in our lives? We need practical strategies. The first and most important strategy is to start ridiculously small. We often fail because our ambition is too big at the start. The key is to start with a habit that is so easy, you can't say no. A great concept for this is the 2-minute rule. Whatever your goal is, scale it down to something that takes less than 2 minutes to do. Do you want to read more? Your new habit is not read a book every week. It's read 1 page. The point is not to get immediate results. The point is to master the art of showing up. A second powerful strategy is to track your progress visually. This is the idea behind the don't break the chain method. Get a big wall calendar, and for each day that you complete your task, put a big red X over that day. Your only job is to not break the chain. This method is incredibly powerful because it shifts your focus. You stop worrying about how good your result is. Your only goal is to get that X on the calendar. A third strategy is a technique called habit stacking. The idea is to link your new desired habit to a habit you already do every day. The formula is, after I current habit, I will new habit. For example, after I brush my teeth in the morning, I will do 2 minutes of stretching. By stacking your new habit onto an existing one, you are much more likely to remember it and do it. A fourth strategy is to focus on creating systems, not just setting goals. A goal is a desired outcome. I want to write a book. A system is the process you follow that will lead to that outcome. I will write 200 words every morning at 8 a.m. When you focus only on the goal, you are constantly falling short. But when you focus on the system, you experience success every single time you execute it. Now, what happens when you do fail? Because you will. You will miss a day. The key is to get back on track as quickly as possible. A brilliant rule for this is to never miss twice. Missing 1 day is an accident. Missing 2 days is the start of a new negative habit. So, if you miss your workout on Monday, make it an absolute priority to get it done on Tuesday. Finally, design your environment for success. Make the cues for your good habits obvious and visible, and the cues for your bad habits invisible. If you want to drink more water, fill up a water bottle and place it on your desk every morning. If you want to stop wasting time on your phone, leave it in another room when you're working. It's important to recognize the deeper benefits of being consistent. Every time you follow through on your small daily promise, you are casting a vote for the type of person you want to be. When you write every day, you are not just writing, you are becoming a writer. When you exercise every day, you are not just exercising, you are becoming an athletic person. Moreover, consistency builds a powerful form of self-trust. Each small action is a promise you make to yourself. When you keep that promise, you are sending a deep message to your subconscious mind. I am reliable. I can count on myself. This builds a foundation of self-confidence that is far more valuable than any single achievement. Consistency also reduces decision fatigue. Our brains have a limited amount of energy for making conscious choices each day. When you turn an action into a habit, you no longer have to decide whether or not to do it. You don't wake up and debate if you should brush your teeth. You just do it. So, as we come to the end of our discussion today, I want you to remember the image of the water drop and the stone. Your great goals might seem like an immovable stone. and your daily efforts can feel like insignificant drops of water. It can be tempting to look for a bigger hammer, but the true power lies in the gentle, relentless consistency of the drop. Your future is not defined by the one or two big things you do. It is forged in the 100,000 small things you do every single day. The choice to learn one more word, to save one more dollar, to be kind one more time. Each action is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. A single stroke is barely visible, but repeated consistently over time, they create a masterpiece. Your challenge, then, is not to find more motivation or to wait for the perfect moment to start. Your challenge is to choose a direction, and then to start walking one small, simple step at a time. It is to embrace the beauty of the ordinary, the power of routine, and the magic of the compound effect. It is to fall in love with the process, not just the prize. It is to have faith that your small, consistent efforts are building something magnificent, even when you cannot yet see the final result. So I ask you, what is one small drop of water you can start with today? What is one tiny habit, so small you cannot fail, that you can commit to with unwavering consistency? Choose it now. Write it down. Put a calendar on your wall and prepare your red pen. The journey to achieving your biggest dreams doesn't start with a giant leap. It starts with a single, repeatable step. Start there, and then just don't stop. Thank you for joining me today on Best English Podcast. I hope this has been a helpful and inspiring session for your English listening practice. If you found value in our time together, I would be so grateful if you would subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so that you never miss an opportunity to learn and grow with us. I'm Sophia, and I look forward to speaking with you again very soon. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and be amazing.